We're joined live from Tel Aviv by Alex Selsky, spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Mr. Selsky, good evening to you. Some of your government colleagues say the Palestinians are to blame for today's violation of the ceasefire, but why did the Israeli military use deadly force against civilians once again? Was there no other option?
Well, the principle is very, very simple. We want to be quiet, and if it will be quiet from the terrorists from Gaza, it will be met by quiet from Israel. But if it will be a violation, and if we will see rockets, and we have seen rockets after the ceasefire, so-called, and then we will respond, and we will respond to bring safety to our citizens again, and that was the goal of the operation. Well, what happened today, apparently these people were on their way for terrorist activity. But you know, it's very interesting, you telling about the fact that Israel attacked terrorists in Gaza, but you're telling nothing about the fact that rockets were fired on Israel after the so-called ceasefire. As
we have reported on that, sir. We have reported on that at length.
But you don't telling it now. Anyway, I just want to repeat it very simply. Quiet will be met by quiet. If it will be violence again, Israel will do everything to defend its citizens.
Was it not to be expected there would be some sporadic incidents like this, though? I guess it's not an ideal world, is it?
So what do you want from us? You call it sporadic incidents, we call it terror and firing on our citizens. We will defend our citizens. So call it whatever you call. We will do everything to defend our citizens. Quiet will be met by quiet. Stop firing rockets, stop bringing terror on our citizens, and then quiet will be met by quiet.
Understood. I'd like to talk about your Iron Dome shield. 6 Israelis were killed by rockets from Gaza during the conflict. Has your government and military done enough, do you think, to make sure that no more rockets are fired into your cities? Are you happy with that system?
First of all, we're really happy about the system, that it does very, very good job. But even though, you know, even the 5 or 10% of rockets that we cannot stop, these are rockets that fall on our citizens. So even one rocket is one rocket too much. Okay, so definitely we hope that the quiet will be last, that we will not be again, that we will not need to use our force again. You know, all we need, all we want, all we dream for is stability and working, and you know, that our children will go to schools. We don't want any force, and it proves that, you know, we didn't go further into the ground operation. We stopped at the moment that we saw that we could achieve quiet. We don't want war. We don't want, you know, to get in with tanks and our troops. We don't want to hurt civilians in Gaza. We just want quiet. That's all.
Hamas, shortly after that ceasefire came into force, claimed it as a victory, didn't they? Your thoughts about that? And of course your thoughts too that a lot of Israelis are criticising the Prime Minister for not, well, for want of a better word, wiping out the threat.
You know, definitely there are many people in Israel that think that Prime Minister should get more, you know, get more of this operation, go on ground operation, because these people don't believe that Hamas will really stop firing rockets. And unfortunately, people in Israel cannot believe that the international community can pressure and enforce this ceasefire, and that's why people are so kind of frustrated that the Prime Minister stopped the operation. But again, the fact that Prime Minister stopped the operation proves that we don't want to invade. We don't want to hurt. We just want stability and peace. And I'm sure that if the quiet will be long, people of Israel will feel it and understand that this is enough. We don't want to use force. We just react to force. We just want stability and peace and working. We do it very well. You know, Israel is a very successful,
but of course the underlying tensions still haven't gone away.
We love working, and we would like to work more.
But I'm saying, sir, of course, that sounds great on paper, but the underlying tensions haven't gone away, have they? We could talk about this for a long time. Iran, I'd like to ask you about that, sir, while you're on the line. An interested party, of course, in all this, looking on. Some officials there have said that Israel has shown weakness by letting Hamas off the hook. How concerned are you with Tehran's reaction?
Well, first of all, I don't think that Israel was weak. Israel did what it thought is needed to stop the rockets. But Israel is not an aggressor, and Israel don't use force when it's not needed. When we feel quiet, we met it with quiet. And that's in every case. And believe me, throughout the last years, it was so many times when Israel was expected to react intensively, but we didn't do so because we really believe that the international community will do so. And we did, very surgical attacks on terrorists. And even now we did very surgical attacks on terrorists. We don't want to use force more than we need. And that's in every case. Just let us live in peace. We will not use force, believe me.
But of course, even though with those surgical attacks, we've heard that word described a lot over the last couple of days, there were dozens of civilians in Gaza killed, including 37 children. Will anyone in your government or military be held accountable for those deaths, do you think, sir?
Definitely, and we're really, really sorry for these deaths, but you should know that Hamas terrorists hide behind civilians. They fire rockets from schools. They hide their rockets in hospitals. They use apartments of people in order to fire rockets on our civilians. When we hurt civilians, we really regret that. But Hamas target our civilians. They see victory in hurting civilians. When we do that, unfortunately, we're really sorry, and we see a failure in that. And believe me, if we do want that civilians will not be hurt, we call upon civilians, and we do it every time before every strike. We call upon civilians not to be around the terrorists and not to let the terrorists use the civilians, and then nobody will hurt. And that's, believe me, what we want. We want to target and hurt only those who fire rockets on us.
Mr. Celsky, there's one very quick thing I wanted to follow up on. We were talking to a guy from the UN last night. There were accusations over the last couple of days before the ceasefire that the UN had allowed shooting from its buildings into your territory. That was hotly denied by the UN spokesman last night. Do you still stand by those accusations?
I don't know what you're talking about exactly.
OK, well, we'll leave it there for now because we haven't got any time on it. But thank you, sir. We do appreciate you being on the programme. Alex Celsky, live from Tel Aviv, spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Appreciate it.